during a blistering afternoon in November 1958. A standard oil exploration flight above the Libyan desert was on the verge of encountering something utterly improbable. Geologist Gordon Bowerman from British Petroleum was examining the vast sands stretching below when he caught sight of an object that had no business being there. A flash of metal catching the sunlight in one of the Sahara's most isolated regions. As the small plane descended in circles, what appeared amid the drifting dunes chilled Bowerman to the core. There sat an American B-24 Liberator bomber, almost completely undamaged in the desert sands, as though it had touched down only the day before. The plane appeared immaculate. No evidence of flames, no significant damage to the structure, simply a four-engine wartime aircraft resting calmly in a sea of sand, some 440 miles inland from the closest shoreline. Yet that defied all logic. No such bomber should have ventured this far into the Sahara, and had it crashed in this spot, the force should have ripped it apart. Sandstorms should have entombed it, or looters should have picked it clean over time. Still, this plane seemed as if its crew had merely left it parked and strolled off. When Bowerman notified British officials of his find, it launched an inquiry that dragged on for months and eventually uncovered one of World War II's most heartbreaking tales of endurance. The fate of this missing bomber's crew would challenge everything specialists believed possible regarding survival in the desert and demonstrate that reality can sometimes prove far more terrifying than any enigma. This is the account of how 9 young Americans disappeared into the Sahara back in 1943, and the revelations searchers made 16 years afterward that detailed precisely how they perished. To grasp what befell that bomber and its men, we must return 15 years earlier to April 4th, 1943. The Second World War had raged for almost 4 years by then, and the battles in the Mediterranean had grown vital to Allied success. Dominating North Africa secured vital supply lines, and each raid edged the Allies nearer to expelling Axis troops from the area. On a dusty runway close to Benghazi in Libya, 25 US B-24 Liberator bombers stood prepared for an important assault on Naples, Italy. The objectives were the port and storage facilities sustaining German and Italian armies throughout North Africa. It was meant to be a straightforward operation. Head north over the Mediterranean, release payloads on key sites, and make it back to base prior to dusk. One of those planes was a fresh B-24D Liberator, without any battle experience. Leading the crew was a youthful pilot, First Lieutenant William Hatton, embarking on his initial combat sortie. His team of 9 was largely composed of young men in their teens, recently out of instruction and anxious to show their worth in real fighting. Yet, as soon as the engines began revving up that morning, issues started appearing. Meteorological reports worsened quickly across the area. Fierce gusts swept the desert, hauling dense layers of sand that cut sightlines to nearly zero. The notorious sandstorms of the Sahara, which had tormented forces since antiquity, were intensifying into a suffocating barrier of dust and grit. While the initial group of bombers tried departing, crews soon realized they faced dangers much greater than expected. The sand did more than obscure views. It invaded engines, blocked filters, and caused failures that might turn deadly above hostile ground. Gradually, plane after plane's leaders chose the tough call to scrub and head back. When the follow-up group readied itself, just a few bombers stayed committed. The bulk of the unit had already retreated, their crews reluctant to endanger lives in those treacherous conditions. However, the team aboard that untouched B-24D reached a crucial choice. In spite of the declining weather, in spite of watching others reverse course, in spite of all signals urging cancellation, they opted to continue the task. The bomber rose from the Libyan runway and vanished into the churning mass of sand and clouds, aiming north for the Mediterranean. 16 years would pass before the next chapter emerged. Navigating the sandstorm turned out far worse than the team had foreseen. Within the plane, sand seeped into every opening and gap. Orientation grew almost impossible as known markers disappeared under the tempest. Radio links turned unreliable from interference in the atmosphere. They were basically navigating blindly amid a swirling haze of brown. But these were skilled servicemen trained for such trials. They pushed ahead to their objective in Naples, resolute in finishing the assignment despite escalating challenges. Time dragged on as they battled the storm. The bombers for engines laboring against opposing winds that risked veering them astray. Upon nearing the Italian shoreline at last, another issue arose. Over Naples, clouds hung so densely that spotting targets proved unfeasible. The port, the warehouses, the vital sites reviewed in permission sessions. Hidden behind thick, impenetrable vapor. Standard procedure dictated that if targets couldn't be confirmed, crews should return intact with bombs. Dropping without aim endangered innocents and squandered vital munitions. Thus, the team took the sole viable option, cancelled the attack and turned back toward Libya. The bomber veered south, starting what ought to have been an ordinary journey home. The men probably sensed letdown at missing their debut combat run. But they had adhered to protocol and would have chances ahead, or so it seemed. None grasped that their true nightmare was only commencing, the sandstorm complicating their outbound. Legs still roared over Libya, and now darkness compounded the return navigation. Evening had arrived en route to Naples, and lacking surface illumination or visible stars for reference. Locating their modest runway amid endless desert became extraordinarily difficult. As the plane headed south into the pitch-black instruments started breaking down. The key automatic direction finder, essential for holding course, faltered from the extreme environment. Lacking this critical tool, they navigated blindly in a barren expanse of sand and night. Radio exchanges with base turned spotty. Even when signals reached, replies often came distorted or partial. Base staff contended with their own storm-related chaos. Hour upon hour, the plane pressed south, consuming fuel at a worrying pace. The team realized they ought to have spotted base long ago, yet no trace of the expected coast or runway beacons appeared. Rather, they soared above infinite obscurity with nothing discernible below and no means to fix their location. As fuel indicators neared zero, dread settled among the 9 aboard. They were adrift somewhere above the Sahara, blind in a sandstorm, lacking navigation aids and with fuel dwindling fast. The choices ahead in moments would shape not only short-term survival but their destiny in Earth's harshest terrains, with tanks nearly dry and no hint of base visible. Lieutenant Hatton confronted a dire dilemma. Try touching down blindly on unfamiliar ground, risking instant fatal wreck, or ditch the plane at altitude banking on parachutes for safe descent. Hatton issued the command, sparing them briefly while dooming them to unimaginable suffering. The directive echoed over intercom, ready to jump. Every man fastened his chute, verified equipment, and braced for what they assumed would be standard exit and swift pickup. They thought themselves above the Mediterranean, near enough to Libya's shore for rapid location by rescuers. Individually, the 9 exited through hatches. Wind and engine roar assaulted their senses as they jumped into the void below. None foresaw leaping not into the sea's relative mercy, but onto the brink of the planet's deadliest zones. The initial jumper's chute opened in the dark. Then the next, the third, until all 9 had left the plane drifting downward through night toward hoped-for rescue. Yet upon hitting firm earth rather than waves, terror struck. The sand underfoot revealed a truth no one wished to accept. They hadn't exited over the sea as intended. Rather, they had jumped deep over the Sahara, vastly farther inland than calculated. The empty bomber, meanwhile, carried on its unmanned path. Without guidance, it flew autopilot another 15 miles until fuel exhausted entirely. It descended gliding through night and settled onto the desert, fracturing somewhat but staying mostly whole in yielding sand as light broke over the desert. April 5, 1943. 8 of 9 crew reunited via flares and calls. Scattered over miles in descent, training enabled regrouping. But initial relief swiftly shifted to alarm. Lieutenant John Warofka, bombardier, remained missing despite flare signals and cries into the void. They never encountered him again. With rising sun and heat, the 8 assessed their plight with growing horror. They stood amid nothingness, dunes extending endlessly in all directions. No hints of habitation, no paths, no orienting features toward rescue. Gear for survival was scant. Among 8, merely 1 partially filled canteen, minimal rations, and their uniforms. Prepared for standard raid, not endurance in extreme aridity. Yet these were disciplined troops taught unbreakable resolve. They swiftly coordinated and strategized survival plus expected aid. Rescuers must be en route, and enduring a couple days would bring salvation. Lieutenant Hatton, ranking officer, assumed leadership. After crew input, he chose what training suggested reasonable. March northwest toward presumed Libyan shore. Estimates placed coast 50 to 60 miles distant, 2 to 3 days, trek 4, fit men over flat ground. They'd faced tougher in drills. Unbeknownst to them, estimates catastrophically erred. They touched down almost 450 miles inland near the Calancio Sand Sea. A 24,000 square mile dune field with daytime highs over 130 degrees Fahrenheit. No moisture, no plants, no cover. No sustenance in this moon-like expanse of sand, as 8 commenced northwest trek, morning of April 5th. Hope accompanied them for imminent aid. They couldn't know they entered one of history's greatest endurance trials. The desert unfolded like boundless sandy waves, stunning yet dreadful in dawn glow. Each stride from landing distanced quick rescue and plunged deeper into wilderness, claiming lives across eras. Their initial marching day delivered harsh desert lessons. Morning offered tolerable warmth and light wind for comfort. Men stayed hopeful, maintaining rhythm, discipline, holding them steady. But as sun rose clear, heat intensified unbearably. Ground sand baked like furnace, air quivered, distorting sight. Breaths burned, uniforms drenched, sweat vanishing in arid. Nest.co-pilot Lieutenant Robert Toner began journaling. Pocket notebook, in-flight suit, captured ordeal. April 5th entry, noted escalating hardship, heading northwest. No trace of John yet. Shared half canteen among 8 1-cap daily each. Nights freezing, sleep impossible day - night extremes ranked among toughest hurdles. Days, scorched halting motion. Nights plunged, chilling, preventing rest. Deserts, poor heat retention dropped, temperatures sharply post-sunset, leaving men trembling in light suits, They soon adjusted tactics, moving mainly dawn and twilight, seeking any scant shade midday. But shade scarce, in barrenness, no boulders, plants, formations for sun relief. By day 2, dehydration signs emerged. Rationed, supply depleted quicker than planned. Constant thirst dominated thoughts. Mouths parched, sticky, tongues swelled, lips split, bleeding in dryness. Mental strain rivaled physical. Growing awareness, survival unlikely weighed. Some projected cheer, rallying others, rescue imminent. Others withdrew silently, saving strength for march. Toner's notes grew despairing over time. Encountered dunes, all severely weakened. Sergeant Lamotte's vision fully lost to sand glare. Others with serious eye issues. Still northwest, slower advance. Sand blindness from sun glare off pale dunes, mirrored snow blindness, lacking eye gear. Intense reflection blinded several, complicating navigation. Sighted, guided blind. Traversing taller dunes, condition worsened fast. Dehydration, starvation, fatigue, exposure ravaged. Men recently fit now staggered, falling, holding northwest. Dunes tormented anew. Scaling each in frailty demanded immense effort. Shifting sand resisted steps. Labor to crest, hoping sight of aid or water yielded only more identical dunes. Horizon-bound days merged in torment of heat. Thirst, weariness. Rations gone in 48 hours. Water exhausted. Subsisting on nothing, bodies self-cannibalizing. Toner persisted recording. Script shakier. Day 5 barely mobile. Vision nearly lost. Hatton, Hayes, Adams, Lamotte, unable proceed, weak. Ripslinger, Shelley, more advanced seeking aid. By April 9th, 5 days in, hopelessness gripped some. Hatton, Toner, Hayes, Adams, Lamotte reached endurance end. 3 stronger faced wrenching choice. Remain dying, united, or push northwest for rescue. After agonizing debate, decision, Sergeants Harold Ripslinger, Guy Shelley, Vernon Moore proceed while others await aid. Heart-rending for all, yet final chance. Departing trio gathered remnant supplies. Ready to possible last push, civilization. Vowed return with rescuers, though odds known. Toner's closing notes for stay-behinds. Shelley, Ripslinger, more departed aid. Us to feeble. Vision nearly gone. Night still freezing. Aid absent. Final note, April 12th. Few haunting words. Aid absent. Freezing night. All preparing. Satwa as trio crested northwest dunes. 5 succumbed in sand after over weeks' fight against brutality. Estimated 85 miles trekked in deadliest terrain with negligible sustenance. But trio's tale continued. Ripslinger, Shelley, more advanced endless dunes fueled desperate optimism. Seek aid, save comrades. Unaware hundreds miles to settlement. 21-year-old Sergeant Harold Ripslinger emerged informal guide. Steady demeanor. Resolve propelled group when surrender tempted. Shelley and Moore kept stride despite decline. Terrain surrealized. Dunes soared taller. Some 600 feet like solidified golden waves, scaling giants, exhausting for weak-starved men. Hallucinations struck second day solo. Dehydration, fatigue, tricked senses. Shelley spotted distant palms dissolving nearer. More conversed absent kin. Water depleted days prior. Desperate attempts, spread cloth, pre-dawn due to dry. Doug Lawsoned only. Deterioration grotesque. Lips split painfully. Tongues swollen, hindering swallow. Skin leathery, sun-scorched wind, dash abraded. Around 11th-12th day, Sergeant Guy Shelley halted. Body failed. Ripslinger more lingered possible than painfully proceeded. Now duo, Ripslinger and more advanced. Defying medicine, bodies last 3 to 4 days, desert sands, water. These marched nearly fortnight near nothing. Soon Sergeant Vernon Moore fell. Ripslinger remained. Moore insisted onward alone seek aid. Ripslinger staggered solitary. More death than alive, Sergeant Harold Ripslinger covered over 109-mile Sahara before collapse. Remains later. Prone sand, arms forward, crawling at end. Farthest any, willpower incomprehensible, but ahead ourselves. 15 years, none new events. Bomber missing April 4th, 1943, prompted instant searches. Planes scoured Mediterranean, Libyan coast days no sign. Weeks hunted wrong areas. Unimaginable, 400 miles inland. Assumed sea crash. Survivors perhaps Axis captives. Months to years silent. Military listed 9 Kia. Families grieved, unaware truth. Bomber rested landed spot. Sands alternately burying, exposing. Crews scattered over 100+ miles. Dryness, preserving. Sahara, guarded secret 15 years. November 1958. Shifted when Bowerman glimpsed metal oil flight. Discovery sparked vastest military recovery. Initial team. February 1959. Plain sand, mostly hull. Appearing recent, not 16 years. Gear retracted, successful bailout. No blaze, minimal impact, interior stunned, guns loaded, operable. Radio workable. Cockpit thermoses held preserved coffee dryness. Maps, charts, navigator table plotted Libyan April's return. All as crew abandoned. Time frozen desert. Team scoured vicinity, crew traces. Grid walks dunes, seeking clues, direction. Months, finds narrated. Unbelievable tale, experts doubted. First remains 78 miles northwest. Sergeant Adams, then Hayes, Lamort. Each stretched survival beliefs. Shock toners, remains with pocket diary. Extracting notebook. Reading entries, unveiled full agony. Diary chronicled daily torment. Early hope to mounting despair, dire realization, notes revived nightmare. 1 capful daily each. Vision nearly gone, sand glare. Freezing nights. Aid absent. Everybody preparing, implying peace with approaching end. Diary guided further searches. Notes trio northwest prompted deeper probes. Hatton, 85 miles sight. Shelley, 91 miles. Distances astounding, farther waterless Sahara deemed possible. Ripslinger stunned, 109 miles northwest. Farthest, defying medical human bounds. Prone arms forward, crawling, final moments. Even walking impossible. Reserves depleted. Onward, salvation unattainable. 8 and 9 recovered. Returned us, honored burials. Families closure, post 15 years uncertainty. Truth, loved ones, deaths near unbearable. 1 unfound. Sergeant Vernon Moore with Ripslinger post Shelley collapse. Vanished Sahara. Searches fruitless desert, total claim. Resting place unknown today. Off-course mystery resolved, weather data, equipment analysis. Storm deviated path. Faulty finder, false bearings. Bailout believed Mediterranean coastal. Actually hundreds inland, hostile brink. Military-studied ordeal, comprehending impossible endurance. Experts reviewed journey. Consensus defied science, human limits. Typical 3 days water, normal. Desert heat under 24 hours. Yet week plus, some fortnight, near no sustenance, food. 100 miles terrain, nomads, shunned. Tail survival training staple. Highlighted body extremes, cautionary control, loss. Bomber recovered, analyzed. Parts, museums, reminders. Crew named Lady B-Good forever linked World War II tragic endurance. Decades post-discovery. Lady Be-Good crew retold. Or determination young men. Boys mostly. Teens barely. Impossible war thrust. Remarkable not distances, conditions alone. Never quitting. Rescue hopeless, bodies failing. Death, facing forward, persisted. Lieutenant Robert Toner's preserved diary testament valor. Words physical plus mental, emotional hope amid despair. Final, everybody getting ready historians interpret peace fate. Fought utmost, beyond limits. Nothing left death, met courage throughout. Today crash zone, remotest Sahara. Rare visitors grasp treading ground 9. American lives history's extraordinary endurance test. Lady Be-Good crew, over 100 miles, impossible experts. Near no, water, food, hope, rescue. Soldiers trained unsurrendering. Brotherhood demanded final breath fight. Bowerman, 1958. Metal glint unlocked 15-year family-haunting mystery. Closure brought, tale, extraordinary inspires, horrifies, equally, Sahara harbors secrets. Lady Be-Good crew, remarkable human determination. Testament, recorded 9 young, refused yield Earth's hostile. Desert lives claimed, spirits never. Sergeant Vernon Moore lies endless sand somewhere. Desert's last secret, terrible April 1943 week. Name 8 companions, history etched proof. Human spirit endures, imagined far. Even survival, impossible.